Jason Rezaian, the Washington Post reporter in Tehran, was jailed over 18 months ago on an espionage charge. His case was very public here in the US, the entire media industry pressing for his release. The other three US citizens released by Iran are Saeeda Abedini, a 35-year-old Christian pastor, and Amir Hekmati, a 32-year-old former Marine who spent more than 4 years in prison on spying charges. As Nosratollah Khosravi Roodsari, described by the Iranian state television as a businessman, also released. Now, US officials said Iran also released a fifth American, student Matthew Trevithick, in a separate agreement. The Americans are traveling to Switzerland, then to a US base in Germany for medical treatment, and will be home, quote, soon. Now, the Iranians freed by the US are mainly Iranian Americans who may actually not go back to Iran. They are all accused of violating sanctions against Iran during the nuclear period. Iran's media has named them as Nadir Mandandulu, Bahram Mekhanik, Khosrow Afkahi, Ashraf Garamen, Turaj Faridi, and Nima Golestani, and lastly, Ali Subanichi. The US also announced that 14 Iranians that it's been seeking will now be removed from an Interpol wanted list, so-called red list as well. Of course, all this, as Lillian was just saying, coming on implementation day, the announcement that Iran's nuclear deal with the international community is being implemented, and that, of course, means hundreds of billions of dollars in frozen assets being released. Other sanctions will be lifted too against Iran. So some people are raising an eyebrow about the timing here.
Right, exactly. You know, is it in fact a coincidence?
Good question. Both sides have said in the past that the nuclear negotiations successfully concluded late last year were negotiated in a vacuum. No other issues were discussed. We've just heard from US Secretary of State John Kerry in Vienna at that implementation day talks, and he said that the talks were not linked, but progress in the nuclear talks, quote, accelerated the prisoner talks. He also said that the diplomatic channels unlocked, his words, by the nuclear deal helped. And according to unnamed officials quoted here in the US media, those negotiations for the prisoners have been going on separately from the nuclear talks for 14 months. But yep, the timing is pretty close to be entirely coincidental. Many saying, however, this deal was reached, it's a sign of growing cooperation between Iran and the US in the wake of that nuclear deal, and a further sign that this relationship between Tehran and Washington is improving on many fronts decades after mutual hostilities.